It was supposed to be a celebration, our daughter's birthday, but then Brad dropped the bomb. I'm done. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I couldn't breathe. In front of everyone, he casually walked away from everything we had built. I wanted to collapse, to beg him to stay, but I didn't. I stood there, shaking, heartbroken, but something deep inside me whispered, "You can't let him see you fall apart." He thought he was leaving me behind, but what he didn't realize was that this was just the beginning of my story. It was a warm Sunday afternoon when the party kicked off. Our daughter, Emma, had been planning her 10th birthday for months. She wanted a princess-themed celebration, complete with fairy lights, a bouncy castle, and a full spread of cupcakes, macarons, and chocolate-dipped strawberries. The backyard was a sight to behold, balloons swaying in the light breeze, laughter filling the air, and Emma beaming with excitement as her friends arrived, dressed in their frilly dresses and superhero capes. I watched from the corner of the backyard, my glass of lemonade half empty, a smile playing on my lips as I watched Emma run toward her friends, her laughter like music to my ears. The world felt almost perfect in those few minutes, but I should have known better. Life never stays perfect for long. A sudden shift in energy caught my attention. I turned to look at Brad, my husband, who had stepped outside the house and stood by the garden, fidgeting with his phone. He had been strangely distant all day, for the last few weeks actually. The tension between us had been building up, but I didn't want to admit it. I was too focused on making Emma's day special to confront the unease I had felt in our marriage. But now, something was different. Something was off. He noticed me staring and gave a strained smile before walking over. "Hey, everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual, masking the worry in my voice. "Yeah, fine," Brad replied, though his eyes didn't meet mine. He shifted his weight uncomfortably. "Come on, we're all celebrating today, aren't we?" I nudged, trying to lighten the mood. Emma's having the time of her life. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a long, deliberate sip from his beer, staring into the distance. My heart beat a little faster as I waited for him to say something, anything. The silence between us felt too thick, like it was suffocating the air. And then, as if it couldn't be avoided any longer, he turned to me with a cold, calculated expression. "I think it's time we ended this," he said flatly, his tone completely devoid of emotion. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It was as if someone had knocked the wind out of me. I thought I'd misheard him. Surely he didn't just say what I thought he did. What do you mean?" I managed, my voice shaking slightly, though I tried to maintain control. "I'm done. Us, it's over." He took another sip of his beer and turned his back to me as if he were talking about the weather. There it was, the moment I had feared yet never truly prepared for. My husband, the man I had shared my life with for the past 12 years, had just told me that he wanted out. I didn't know what to say, or maybe I didn't want to say anything. I watched as Brad's gaze returned to the party, to Emma, who was oblivious to the drama unfolding behind the scenes. I could feel the tension in the air, thickening by the second, yet there was nothing I could do to cut through it. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as I tried to process his words. This wasn't the Brad I had married, or at least the man I thought he was. I knew we had been drifting, but this was something else. This was a finality I hadn't anticipated. We had shared our dreams, raised a child together, weathered storms, and yet here we were, standing on opposite sides of a massive divide. "Is this really happening?" I asked, my voice now quieter but full of disbelief. "In front of her birthday party? In front of Emma?" Brad looked at me, and there was a flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, but it quickly vanished. He didn't respond. He just shook his head, almost like he couldn't wait to be anywhere else but here, anywhere else but in this life with me. I glanced over at Emma, laughing and spinning in her party dress, completely unaware of the devastation brewing just a few feet away. The weight of the moment hit me like a freight train, and I realized that this wasn't just about me and Brad anymore. This was about Emma, too. And for a split second, I wanted to crumble under the pressure. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I took a deep breath. No tears. Not here. Not now. Okay, I said slowly, letting the words sink in. I'm glad you're being honest, Brad. I really am. He looked surprised at my calm response, but I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of an emotional outburst. Not yet. I need some time to think, I added, maintaining my composure. For now, let's just focus on Emma. I won't ruin her day over this. I gestured toward the party, hoping that Emma wouldn't see the crack in my smile. Brad nodded, his face unreadable, before he walked away. And just like that, I was alone in my thoughts, standing on the edge of a new chapter in my life, and I had no idea where it was going to lead. The weight of his words hung in the air as I tried to keep it together for Emma. For now, that's all that mattered. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The party continued without a hitch. Children ran around the yard, laughing and playing, their giggles and shrieks of joy blending into the background. I kept my eyes on Emma, making sure she was still having the time of her life. She deserved that. A smile crept onto my face as I watched her. She was spinning around with her friends, her princess tiara glittering under the sunlight. The innocence. In her eyes, the sheer joy of the day. It was a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in my heart. I stood there for a while, my hands gripping the edge of the table, taking deep breaths to calm myself. The air smelled of fresh grass and sugar from the cupcakes, and I tried to ground myself in that for a moment, to hold on to something familiar, something that could anchor me in this sudden storm. But my mind kept circling back to Brad. I'm done, he had said. Those words echoed in my head, relentless, like a drumbeat in the quiet corners of my mind. The finality of it was jarring. I'd always known that something was off between us. The late nights, the silences at dinner, the growing distance. I had seen the signs, but I had been too scared to face them. Or maybe I thought if I just kept trying, if I kept holding on, everything would eventually fall back into place. How foolish of me. I could hear the laughter and chatter around me, but it felt distant, muffled. My senses were heightened, the weight of the situation pressing against me like a vice. I hadn't been prepared for this, not today, not at Emma's party. But then again, was there ever a good time to hear that the person you had built your life with was done with you? I turned and saw Brad talking to a few of our friends, trying to blend in, trying to act normal. He was a good actor, that one. He could smile through anything, even when it meant tearing apart the life we had built. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge the tension that hung in the air between us, as if everything was just fine, as if he hadn't just shattered everything with a single sentence. I took another deep breath. Don't let him see you break, I thought. Not here, not now. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself slipping into autopilot. I moved through the motions, greeting guests, making sure the kids had enough snacks, laughing at jokes that didn't reach my heart. I smiled, I talked, I played the part of the perfect host, but inside, everything was unraveling. I kept a careful eye on Brad. Every time he glanced in my direction, I caught his eyes quickly darting away. Guilt? Or was it indifference? I couldn't tell. It didn't matter. Not right now. The party started winding down around 5 o'clock, with the last of the kids reluctantly leaving, their faces sticky with frosting and their hands clutching party favors. I thanked them all, forced a smile, and waved as they hopped into cars with their parents. Emma was still buzzing with excitement, showing me her birthday presents, talking about how much fun she had, but I could see the tiny cracks in her enthusiasm. The last few hours hadn't gone unnoticed by her. She wasn't oblivious. She knew something was wrong. "Mom, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice quiet as she tugged at my sleeve. I crouched down to her level and smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Everything's fine, sweetie," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. "Just tired. It's been a long day." Emma nodded, but her brow furrowed slightly, the concern still lingering in her eyes. I hated that she could see it, that she could sense the tension. But I didn't want to burden her with any more of this. She deserved a happy birthday, even if the world around her felt like it was crumbling. "Why don't you go inside and pick out a movie for us to watch?" I think we could both use a little downtime, huh? She grinned and scampered off, her princess dress swishing as she ran into the house. I stayed outside for a moment, the silence around me both comforting and overwhelming. I had to face this. This was my reality now, and no matter how much I tried to deny it, Brad had made his decision. I could pretend for the rest of the day, keep up the facade of a happy family, but deep down, I knew things had changed. The life we had built together was shattered, and there was no going back. I walked inside, slowly, taking my time. I could hear Emma's voice as she picked out the movie, her tone bright and carefree. I forced myself to smile as I entered the living room, but the weight of everything threatened to pull me under. I sat down on the couch next to Emma, doing my best to be present, to forget for a moment the turmoil that raged inside me. But it was impossible. I could still see Brad's face in my mind, his cold, distant expression, as he said he was done. That moment kept repeating in my head like an unwanted song. The silence between us grew thicker as Emma curled up next to me, her small body warm against mine. She didn't know what was coming. She didn't know that her world was about to be turned upside down. And maybe that was the hardest part, trying to protect her, trying to keep her safe, while I was drowning in a sea of unanswered questions. As the evening wore on, the weight of the day settled in. Emma, exhausted from the excitement of her birthday, had fallen asleep on the couch next to me, her head resting on my lap. I gently stroked her hair, watching the flickering images on the TV, though I wasn't really paying attention to the movie. My mind kept returning to Brad, to the words he had said earlier, "I'm done." The more I replayed that moment, the more my anger bubbled up. It wasn't just the betrayal, not just the fact that he had made his announcement in front of Emma and our friends. It was the complete disregard for everything we had shared. All those years of marriage, of building a life together, suddenly reduced to a single sentence. And in front of our daughter, no less. The audacity, the cruelty. I glanced over at Brad, who was sitting across the room, pretending to pay attention to a conversation with one of our friends. His back was to me, but I could see the tension in his posture. It was as though he was trying to avoid me, to avoid facing the consequences of his actions. I was done pretending too. I couldn't keep up the charade any longer. This wasn't about Emma's party or our friends, or even the superficial peace we had maintained. This was about us, about the truth of our relationship, what it had become, and where we went from here. "Brad," I called out, my voice sharper than I intended. He turned slowly, as if he had been waiting for this moment, but trying to avoid it for as long as possible. His eyes flickered nervously, and for a split second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Can we talk?" I asked, standing up from the couch and walking toward him. Emma was still sleeping, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Brad's eyes darted to Emma and then back to me. His expression hardened, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. He knew this wasn't going to be pretty. "I don't think now is the best time," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. "Really? Is there ever a good time for you?" I shot back, my frustration spilling over. "You chose today, Brad. You chose this moment in front of everyone to drop a bombshell on me. You want to walk away from everything we've built, from our daughter, and you think I'm supposed to just go along with it?" He stood up, his face now flushed with anger. "I'm not doing this right now, okay?" he snapped. "Emma's here, and I don't want to make a scene in front of her." "Well, you already did, didn't you?" I countered, my voice rising. "You humiliated me today, Brad. In front of all our friends, in front of Emma, and now you want to pretend like it's all fine, that you just want to walk away and I should be okay with it? That's not how this works." He looked like he was about to say something, but then stopped. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. It was like we were both waiting for the other to make the first move. "Why, Brad?" I asked quietly, my voice wavering slightly. "Why now? Why today?" He opened his mouth to answer, but I raised my hand, silencing him. "No, don't give me some excuse. Don't tell me you've been thinking about this for a while. Don't tell me it's because things have changed, because that's not the truth. The truth is, you've already checked out, haven't you? You've been checked out for months, maybe even years, and I've been the fool, holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore. Brad didn't respond, and for a moment I thought he might walk away again. But then something shifted in him. His shoulders slumped, and the defensive walls he had put up came crashing down. "I didn't want it to be like this," he said, his voice strained. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emily. I never wanted any of this. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I've been unhappy for a long time, and I thought if I just kept quiet, kept going through the motions, maybe it would get better. But it didn't. It just made things worse." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "Unhappy? You've been unhappy for years, and you never once had the decency to tell me? Instead, you just let me live in this lie, in this illusion of a marriage. And now you're standing here telling me it's over?" "I didn't know how to tell you," he muttered, looking down at the floor. "I didn't know how to face you, how to face the life we built. It felt easier to just let it go. It felt easier to walk away." "And what about me, Brad? What about the life I built? What about Emma? You think this is just a game? That we're just going to pack up and walk away like nothing happened?" "I never meant for things to get this bad," he said, his voice softening. "But I've made my decision." "You made your decision, but so have I replied, the words cutting through the air like a blade. "I'm done with the excuses, Brad. I'm done pretending. If you want out, then go. But don't think for a second that I'm going to let you tear this family apart without consequences." Brad stood there, looking taken aback. He had expected a tearful breakdown, or at the very least, a frantic plea from me to make things right. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the one who would beg him to stay. He had already made his choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. His face twisted in frustration. "You're being cold. I didn't think you'd turn on me like this." "You don't get to accuse me of being cold, Brad," I snapped. "Not after everything you've done. Not after you've been lying to me for months, keeping secrets, thinking I wouldn't notice." For a second, he looked defeated, as if the reality of the situation was sinking in. And then, just as quickly, his face twisted with anger again. "Fine," he said sharply. "If you're so sure about this, then I guess there's nothing left to say." And with that, he stormed out of the room, leaving me standing there, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the storm swirling inside me, but I wasn't about to let him see me break. Not now, not when I had finally taken control. The house felt eerily quiet after Brad left the room. Emma was still fast asleep on the couch, blissfully unaware of the emotional hurricane that had just torn through our home. I stood there for a moment, just looking at her, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I had finally stood up for myself, because I wasn't going to let Brad's selfishness control my life any longer. But also dread, because I knew the storm wasn't over yet. In fact, it had only just begun. I could still hear the slamming of the door as Brad stormed out of the living room. The sound was a sharp punctuation to the painful silence that had descended. I slowly walked over to Emma, sitting down on the couch beside her. She stirred, opening her eyes and blinking up at me sleepily. "Mom?" she murmured, her voice small. "Is everything okay?" I smiled down at her, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "Everything's fine, sweetie. Just a little tired. Go ahead. And finish your movie. I'm right here." She nodded, though her eyes were wide with concern. I could tell she had sensed something was off. The last thing I wanted was to drag her into this mess. She was only 10. She didn't deserve to be burdened with the weight of adult decisions. As the movie played in the background, I sat there, my mind racing. Brad had already made up his mind, and no matter how many times I replayed our conversation, I knew there was no going back. He was done. He had checked out long before today, and I had been too blind to see it. The anger still surged through me, but it was tempered with a cold realization. This was my life now. I had to navigate this new chapter, with or without him. I couldn't even remember the last time I had felt like I was truly in control of my life. For years, I had been living in the shadows of Brad's needs, his desires, and his whims. I had put my own career on hold for his dreams, his projects, his plans. I had sacrificed pieces of myself to hold our family together, thinking that if I just kept working hard enough, if I just kept holding on, things would get better. But they never did. Instead, they just kept crumbling. The truth was, I had lost myself in the process of trying to keep him happy, trying to keep our family together. And now, as I sat in the quiet of our living room, I realized I wasn't sure who I even was anymore. Was I just Brad's wife, or was there something more to me than that? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the coffee machine humming in the kitchen. The house was still quiet, save for the soft hum of daily life. Emma was still asleep in her room, and the remnants of yesterday's party, empty cups, balloons scattered across the floor, lay untouched. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a soft light over everything, but it did nothing to dispel the weight hanging over me. Brad had left the house early, his things packed into the back of his car, though I hadn't been awake to see him go. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty mug of coffee in front of me. The silence felt deafening, and the emptiness of the space around me matched the feeling inside. The life I thought I had been building with Brad was now in tatters, and I was left trying to figure out what came next. I had never imagined this day would come. Never thought I would be the one sitting here, nursing a cup of coffee and trying to make sense of a broken marriage. The doorbell rang. I froze, staring at the door. A part of me didn't want to answer it. What was there to say? Who could possibly have anything left to say? But I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to face this. I stood up and opened the door, and there he was, Brad, standing in the doorway, his face tired and drawn. He looked different somehow, defeated almost. The facade of confidence he had worn the day before was gone. He looked like a man who had just realized that everything he had taken for granted was slipping through his fingers. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I glanced over his shoulder, expecting to see some sort of excuse, perhaps a few of his things still packed in his car, maybe even Cassandra. But it was just him, and something about the way he stood there uncertain made my resolve harden. "No," I said flatly. "There's nothing to talk about, Brad. You made your decision yesterday. You're done. So why are you here?" "I made a mistake," he said, his voice cracking slightly. You made a mistake?" "You don't get to say that now," I interrupted. "You've been making mistakes for years, Brad, and you never thought it was time to tell me? You just let everything fall apart without even trying to fix it?" He stepped forward slightly, but I held up my hand, stopping him. "Don't. Just don't. You can't walk in here and act like nothing happened. You don't get to do that. Not after everything." Brad swallowed hard, his eyes darting nervously. "I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to tell you I was unhappy. I've been trying to figure it out for months, and then I just snapped yesterday. I was angry and I said things I didn't mean." "Things you didn't mean?" I scoffed, my anger flaring again. "You didn't just say things. You ended things. You publicly humiliated me. You told me it was over, and now you want to come back and pretend like you can just erase that." "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said, his voice quieter now, more desperate. "But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose Emma. I'm sorry, Emily. Please, give me a chance to fix this. I know I've messed up, but I can't just walk away from everything." His words hit me like a ton of bricks, but I wasn't moved, not anymore. I had spent too many years trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. I wasn't going to beg for him to stay. I wasn't going to keep fighting for a relationship where only one person was putting in the effort. "You already walked away, Brad," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You can't just waltz back in and expect everything to be okay, because you feel guilty now. It doesn't work like that." Brad's face crumpled, and for the first time I saw something resembling regret in his eyes, but it was too late. He had made his choice, and so had I. "I think you should leave," I added, my tone final. "We're done." He stood there for a moment, as if he were going to argue, but then he just nodded, turned, and walked away. And this time, I didn't feel the crushing weight of it. This time, I felt nothing but a quiet strength. It was over, for good this time. Brad's departure didn't come with the usual flood of emotions. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't beg him to come back. The moment he left, a strange sense of peace settled over me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. The oppressive weight of trying to hold on to something that was already gone had been lifted, and I didn't have to pretend anymore. Emma was still asleep when I made the decision. I wasn't going to tell her just yet. I wanted to protect her from the chaos, at least for a little longer. It wasn't right what Brad had done, but I wasn't going to ruin her childhood over his mistakes. She deserved her innocence for as long as she could have it. The silence in the house was both soothing and overwhelming. For so long, there had been a constant background noise. Brad's complaints, his distractions, his excuses for everything. Now, the stillness of the house seemed like an invitation to something new. It was time for me to reclaim what had always been mine, my life, my identity, and my future. I stood in the living room, surveying the space. It was still our home, but it no longer felt like it belonged to us, not in the way it used to. I walked upstairs and into our bedroom, my eyes taking in the familiar sights, the photos on the walls, the knickknacks that Brad had always insisted we keep, the bed where we had once shared laughter and quiet moments. It was all tainted now. I didn't hate him, not really. He was just a man who had made a series of bad choices and thought that running away would solve everything. But it hadn't. Now, I was the one left to clean up the mess, and I would. I wasn't afraid of what came next. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a message from my best friend Sarah, asking how I was doing. It had only been a day since Brad's announcement, but somehow it felt like a lifetime had passed. I hadn't had the chance to speak with anyone. The party had distracted me, but now there was no running from reality. I typed a quick reply. I'm okay. A lot to think about, but I'll be fine. I stared at the message for a moment before hitting send. I didn't know what the future would look like yet. I didn't know what steps I needed to take to rebuild my life. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let Brad's departure define me. As I moved through the house, I found myself sorting through some old boxes in the closet, old journals, memorabilia from my younger days. A picture fell out of one of the boxes, and I picked it up. It was a photo of me from before I met Brad, from before I became a wife and a mother. It was just me, smiling, carefree. And for the first time in years, I remembered who I was long before the responsibilities and heartbreaks. I put the picture down gently and stood there for a moment, just breathing. My future didn't need to be defined by Brad's betrayal. I wasn't going to stay stuck in the past. I wasn't going to let my story end here. This was just the beginning. The days that followed were a blur of tasks, getting Emma settled into school, dealing with the logistical nightmare of separating our finances, and most importantly, trying to figure out how to explain to my daughter what was happening. She deserved the truth, but I didn't want to overwhelm her. I had to find a way to tell her without breaking her heart. It was the third evening after Brad left that I finally decided to have the conversation. Emma and I were sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework. The house was quieter now, with less of the chaos that Brad's presence had always seemed to bring. It felt strange, but oddly calming. "Mom?" Emma asked, her voice tentative as she pushed her books aside. "What's going on? Why did Dad leave?" My heart dropped. I had known this moment would come. It was time to stop pretending everything was fine. She deserved to know the truth. I put down the cup of tea I had been absent-mindedly holding and turned to face her. "Sweetheart, I stopped, trying to gather my thoughts. "Your dad and we've been having problems for a long time. And now, he's decided to leave." Emma's face fell, her brow furrowing in confusion. "But why? What happened?" Took a deep breath, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Sometimes people grow apart, Emma. Sometimes they make choices that hurt others. But this isn't your fault. None of this is your fault, okay?" She stared at me for a long time, the wheels in her mind turning. "But why today? Why on my birthday?" I sighed, pulling her into a hug. "I don't have all the answers, sweetie, but I promise you, no matter what happens, we'll get through this together. You and me, always. For a moment, she just clung to me, and I could feel the tears threatening to spill from my eyes. But I didn't let them fall. I needed to be strong for her. She needed me to be strong. I'm scared, Mom, she whispered, her voice trembling. What if everything changes? Things will change, I said softly, but that doesn't mean they won't be okay. We're still a family, Emma. We just have to find our new normal. She looked up at me, eyes wide, and for the first time in a while, I saw a glimmer of hope in her expression. Will it be okay? I don't know yet, I replied honestly. But we're going to be okay because we have each other. And that's all we need. The weeks that followed were filled with difficult decisions. I filed for divorce, and Brad, for the first time, seemed to truly grasp the consequences of his actions. He fought the process, of course, trying to negotiate terms, but I wasn't having it. I wasn't going to back down, not anymore. As I sorted through the paperwork, gathered evidence, and prepared for the inevitable court battles, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just fighting for my future. I was fighting for my independence, for my identity, for everything I had sacrificed and given up over the years. Emma and I settled into a routine. It wasn't easy, but we adapted. We found our new rhythm. I started going to therapy, focusing on my career again, and finally, after so long, allowed myself to dream again. I signed up for a business course and began taking steps toward creating the life I had always put on hold. One evening, a few months later, I found myself standing at my kitchen window, watching Emma play outside. She was smiling, her face full of joy. I hadn't seen her this carefree in a long time. It was a small moment, but it felt like everything was finally falling into place. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was walking towards something good, something I had built for myself. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't someone defined by what had happened to me. I was free, and that freedom felt like a promise to myself and to Emma. It wasn't the ending I had imagined for my life, but maybe that was okay, because in the end, it was only the beginning.